Hi, I'm Rose Nhem. Ceramicist Naja Tepe makes botanically inspired pieces for form and function. When she's not working with clay, Naja crafts wearable works of art through jewelry making. Come along as we explore the process behind her work.
I would just like to convey that everyday things can be beautiful, and if my functional pottery can make you happy when you take it out of the cupboard, I'd like to convey that happiness and that beauty into your everyday life.
Naja, thank you so much for allowing us in your space.
Thank you for coming.
What made you decide to pursue art?
I was always creative, but I never thought that I could pursue art, actually, because I couldn't draw or paint, and that's what I thought an artist did. Well, in my mid-30s, I decided to go back to HSU. And I don't know, there's something about that time of life where you just want to start doing what you want to do. And I thought, I'm just going to go for an art degree. I had taken a wheel throwing class at the Fire Arts Center from Peggy Loudon 10 years previous. And that was my introduction, really, into ceramics as an adult.
How would you describe your work?
I would say that my work is functional. That's important to me. I really like functional work. I'm not really a knick-knack person. I like to keep my space relatively clean, but I like my functional pieces to be decorative. I would call it a folk art style. I just make what I think is beautiful and I like to look at and use.
What made you decide to choose the botanical theme?
I've always been a gardener. That's just what I've liked to draw, so that's what I started with. And I draw a lot of poppies. Those are my favorite flowers. It's just what's inside of me. So that's what comes out.
Right, blossoming
Yeah.
flower. The original work that you had a lot of contrast, a lot of black and white, and I noticed that you're adding more colors to it. What made you decide to evolve into that color palette?
I did start with black and white originally. I've always just been drawn to that really graphic, bold design type. I would say that I started just because there's so many beautiful glazes to choose from, so I started using color and people really responded well to it. In a way, I'm still really experimenting, so maybe I'll go back to just black and white, but for now I'm having a lot of fun with color.
So do you have a favorite color?
It changes depending on what I'm working on. I love jewel tones, as you can see. I have a lot of purples and dark greens, dark reds, but I think it just depends on what I'm working on, and that's my favorite color at the moment.
Is there anything that satisfies you the most about your work?
I love making pieces that are functional. It can be a lot of work, so many steps in making a piece of pottery, but when I open the kiln and everything's done and I take it out, that's the most satisfying feeling.
The completed work,
The
basically.
completed work, that makes it all worth it.
Is there any advice that you have for a budding artist?
The best advice that I can give is just to make what feels good for you. Don't make your work to make other people happy. For me, when I really came into my stride was when I just started making what was coming out of me and what made me happy.
Could you take us through the process of how you make your ceramics?
Sure. Everything begins with a block of clay. For most of my plates and bowls, I hand build. So I take some clay, I run it through my slab roller, make a sheet of clay, put it on a mold. After that, about a day later, I can take it off the mold, and then I smooth the edges. I paint it with 3 coats of colored underglaze, and then when that's dry enough, I just take a carving tool, just a little metal-tipped carving tool, and I just freehand draw and carve away the designs. And after that, it has to dry till it's bone dry, and then I wax and carve the back of each piece, and then I inlay that design with a colored underglaze. Then it goes through the kiln once, that's called a bisque firing. I take it out, put a clear glaze over it, and put it back in the kiln for a glaze firing, and that's what makes it food safe.
So all of this has been very fascinating. Could we see how you do your work?
I would love to show you.
So what is this part of the process?
So this is where the pieces have come off the molds and they're leather hard. And what I'm doing here is rasping the edges and then sponging them so that they're nice and smooth. I have 3 pieces here. This is going to be a spoon rest, this is going to be a soap dish, and this is just going to be an oval plate or tray.
Okay. So this is just basically just smoothing it out?
Yeah, making it smooth and pretty. So, yeah, just one of the many steps. If the edges are nice and smooth, it makes it less likely to chip.
Ah, yes.
So there's that. And then just aesthetically, it looks nice.
It's very satisfying to watch it smooth out.
It is. I could say that it's pretty therapeutic to work with clay. You want to give it a try?
Sure. All right, let's try this out.
Yeah, I sort of pinch the sponge around the edge.
But you don't want to have too much pressure, right?
Not too much pressure,
Otherwise-
because pottery is pretty much breakable at any stage.
Oh, even during, okay.
Yeah.
Ew, I see. This is a very interesting. So is there a certain stage that the clay has to be in for you to get to the point of carving?
Absolutely. You just sort of learn to tell when the clay is at the right stage. If it's too moist, you can gouge it too much when you're carving. And if it's too dry, the underglaze will chip off and it won't be as clean a line.
How do you know when a piece is ready to be fired?
It's just all a matter of balance, I think. You know, I'll carve the main design, and then as I work on it, I just add details here and there if I feel like it needs a little more balance. And when it feels balanced, I set it aside and let it dry. The weather is a big determining factor. If it's sunny out, pieces can dry really fast. If we're having a foggy day, it can take days and days.
So what do you call this method?
This is called sgraffito, and it's just the carving through the underglaze to reveal the clay body below.
So what language is sgraffito from?
I believe that it's Italian. So when this is fired in the kiln, the clay that looks gray now will turn white.
I see a lot of the repeating patterns that you mentioned. Have you worked on mandalas?
Yeah, aside from flowers, mandalas are probably my other favorite thing to carve and draw. I find it very meditative. And often I incorporate flowers into my mandalas.
How long does carving take, usually, on average?
It depends on the piece. It depends on the complexity of the design. It also depends on whether or not I'm carving away the entire background, which I do on some of my pieces. So something small like a trinket dish, maybe 10 minutes. Something large like a platter, a few hours or more. Even in my borders here, you can see I'm incorporating sort of a leaf design. I try to change up my borders now and again, but when I find something that I like, I usually stick with it for a while.
What do you usually like?
Lots of curves and repeating lines. I find something really comforting in the repeating patterns. So it's busy, but it's organized, maybe. So I was going to carve strawberries on this particular piece.
Now this is something that really impresses me. You are working freehand. Have you ever drawn a pattern and overlaid it on it and then carved it, or do you just work from your brain?
I primarily just carve freehand. I used to say that I didn't know what I was going to carve on a piece until I was holding it in my hand, and I sort of got a feel for what it wanted, and maybe that sounds funny. Now that I make more work, I typically have an idea of what I'm going to do, but I almost never draw anything out beforehand.
How would you describe your work?
I would say that it's sort of traditionally feminine, very botanically inspired, earthy and organic, yet I like to make sure that my pieces are functional, so they're food safe, and they're also microwave and dishwasher safe.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. I want them to be thoroughly used and enjoyed.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced in your art career?
Taking the time to do everything that needs to be done. Pottery is such a time-consuming medium. It requires a lot of care because you can't let things dry out too much. You can't carve when a piece isn't dry enough. So there's a lot of timing that goes into it. So it takes a lot of dedication as far as checking things constantly, working on things at just the right time. Pretty much having it in my mind at all times.
Right.
So it takes a lot of mental and physical energy. So just making the time for that.
Naja, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us on Studio Space.